Now that we're into our model and ready to go, a good habit to get into when you have your template set up the way that you want is to save your file. Right? There's no worse feeling than working through a model or working through any software that is and having a power glitch or something go wrong where you lose your file. So to do that, if we go up to the top left corner, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can click on the disk here to save, or you can go File and Save. And I'm going to put this, let's see, I did create a folder on my desktop called Simple House. And I'm going to call it just that, Simple House. And Revit project files are RVT files. I'm going to click on Save. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Again, like I said in the last video, the best way to learn software is sometimes just to go ahead and start doing it. So we're going to create a very simple single level ranch style house. Nothing too frilly, just to get us going here. So to do that, let's start off by creating walls. So to create our walls, we're going to go up into our architecture tab, and under our architecture ribbon in the build palette, we have a wall command. So if I just put my mouse over the top of this button and let it hover, it gives me some information on what this command does, right? It also gives me another option of how to select this command. So some people like to use pointing and clicking to get to their commands. Other folks like to use keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so here in the wall command, since it's used quite a bit, it does have a keyboard shortcut. So on the top left part of that little pop-up window there, you'll see that we have wall in bold colors, or in bold font, I should say, and in parentheses it says WA. So if I were to simply select WA on my keyboard, it would bring me to the wall command the same way it would if I were just to click on this button. Okay, so there's more than one way to get there. Whichever way you like is personal preference. So I'm going to use mostly clicking just for the sake of understanding and giving a visualization of where objects are within Revit, I should say. But if you are a keyboard-driven user, please feel free to use the keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so I'm going to click on the wall command because I want to start drawing my exterior wall. So again, once I clicked on my wall command, you'll notice that my ribbon changed again. Right? So the ribbon changed to the wall command, and it also brought it up on this little green box here, this little green shadow. This is giving me all the different commands that I can use specifically to modify my wall. It's very similar to other drafting programs you may have used. Now, before I get into that, what I want to do first is I want to change my type of wall, okay? Because Revit is not just a drawing program, it's a BIM program, or Building Information Modeling program. So we want to make sure that we're using the right assemblies and wall types and materials to make sure that we give our model the intelligence that it needs. Okay, so if I click in my properties, I click on the wall type, you'll see that I have a bunch of different wall types loaded in. All of these came in when we selected our Revit template. So we want to use an exterior wall. So we have a bunch of categories here for exterior wall, and just kind of go down through these real quick. We have exterior walls, foundations, just some generic walls if we're not quite sure what we want to use yet, and we have interior walls, retaining walls, so you get the idea. All right, so I'm going to select an exterior wall with wood siding on wood studs. Okay, and I'm going to select that. And I'm going to bring my cursor over into the white modeling area. And whenever you're drawing walls, it's very important to go in a clockwise direction. And I'll show you why that is in a moment. So for this, let's go ahead. I'm going to left click once, and it gets me to a starting position of my wall, and I'm going to drag to the right. And as you'll see, I have some dimensions to help me approximate how big my walls are going to be. Also, you're going to see that I have a blue dashed line. Now that blue dashed line is very helpful because that has me at a horizontal snap, or a horizontal constraint. So I know that I have a perfectly straight wall, or horizontal wall, I should say. But if I wanted to make an angled wall, I can just move my cursor up and it gives me my angles. So you're not just confined to doing everything at 90 degrees, of course. You can make curved walls, bowed walls, angled walls, whatever you want. Okay, but just know that right now we are going to be making a box. So I want this box to be about, about 24, 25 feet thereabouts. Then I'm going to left click, makes my wall selection. I'm going to drag down again. I'm going to make sure that I have that little blue dashed line there to make sure that I'm nice and vertical. And I'm going to go to the left and make a box. You'll notice that when my bottom wall lines up perfectly with my top wall, I get that vertical blue inferencing line once again. That lets me know that if I click right now, I'm going to be perfectly lined up with the wall above me. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to click again, and I'm going to go up until I get two inferencing lines, one on my original line and one vertical, and I'm going to click. All right, so now we have our wall drawn. Now earlier I said that it was important to make sure that we draw in a clockwise direction, and I'm going to show you why. And to do that, I need to get into my 3D view. So to get in my 3D view, I have two different ways that I can do that. One, in my project browser, I can scroll down where it says 3D view, and I can double click right there. Or let's say that I didn't have my project browser open, or I didn't have, it's just not part of my workflow. I can go up top here and I can click on the little house where it says default 3D view, and it does the exact same thing. So since I'm already right here, I'm just going to click on my 3D view, and there I am. Now my 3D view, we can do some navigation here as well, and let me just go over some easy navigation. First, if I want to zoom in, I'll place my mouse at the center point of where I want to zoom in. Let's just say it's at the bottom here, and I'll scroll up with my mouse wheel, my middle mouse wheel, and if I want to zoom out, I scroll down. Now if I want to pan, I will press down on my middle mouse button or my mouse wheel, and I'll move my mouse and I can pan. All right, so you could do panning and zooming just using your middle mouse button or your mouse wheel. All right. Now another thing that we can do here is we could change the view of our building. Right now it kind of looks like a pencil sketch, right? But let's say that we want to make this more colorful or look at it in a little more detail. Okay, because what we're seeing right now is on the outside of the building, we have all of these parallel lines here. That's actually our wood siding, and on the inside, that's our sheetrock, our inside finish. So to change the way this looks, because sometimes this may get a little confusing, if I go down to the bottom of my 3D view here, and I could change my visual style. So I'm going to take my visual style, and I'm going to put it on consistent colors. Right, see, it kind of shades it. Now I can go to a realistic view, which is fine. It's going to take a moment to render, and there we go. Now I try not to stay in the realistic view just because it bogs down my machine as it's rendering, especially when we get a lot more things in here. But when you're looking to take or make final presentations of for a client or whatnot, sometimes a realistic view is nice. But for right now, I'm going to go and click back and make it a consistent color just because my machine runs a little faster with it. So if I pull back, and another navigation tip is if you hold down the shift key on your keyboard and left click and hold, then you can orbit around. Okay, now I am a very heavy user of mouse and scrolling and whatnot, but some people like to use the tool up here where you can use this guy and you can still click and orbit and move around and select on different faces, and however you want it to operate. You can use it with that feature, or of course you can use the mouse and keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so why is it important to go in a clockwise direction? Well, as you can see here, we have the exterior of a wall on the exterior and the interior wall on the interior. Now I'm going to show you what happens when you go in a counterclockwise direction or anti-clockwise direction. So to do that, I want to go back to my first floor view. I have two different ways to do that. When I opened up my 3D view, it gave me a 3D tab up here. And since I was already in my first floor view, I can select my first floor view by clicking back on here again. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do this as we go through. Now I want to get back on my wall command because I'm going to draw a wall the improper way. So again, I can hit WA on my keyboard or select wall. Now Revit remembers that I wanted my basic wall, my exterior wood siding on wall. That's the last thing I selected, so it's automatically going to come up. And now I'm going to draw a wall or another building just on the outside of my other building, just for an example. And I'm drawing counterclockwise, which is how we do not want to be drawing. All right, so there's my wall. And now I'm going to go back to my 3D view up here. Since I've already opened it, I got a nice quick access tab. And you'll see that my walls are now inside out. right? The interior of the wall is on the outside, the interior is on the inside. That's not good. So we definitely don't want to draw in a counterclockwise direction. So let's get rid of that wall. So I like to do stuff in my floor plan view. So I'm going to select it, and I can select one by one, or I can hold down my control key and select multiples, or I could even draw a box around it. And I could either hit the delete key on my keyboard, or come up here to the X and hit delete and get rid of that. All right, but I'm going to show you another way to draw walls, especially if you're just making a simple box. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go back to my wall command, and I have a couple different ways that I could actually draw. So before I was drawing just by lines, right, just kind of going around in that clockwise motion, but I can also use my rectangle tool and just make a rectangle and do it as such. All right, and the nice thing about the rectangle tool, you don't have to worry about if you're going clockwise or counterclockwise in any one direction. Now, before I stop here, I want to kind of point out that it's important that we keep our elevations in mind, meaning how tall our walls are. Okay, so we're just going to do a very simple residential ranch house, so the walls are probably going to be about 8 or 9 feet tall. Now, I'm still in my wall command, and you'll notice up here that we have some options, some additional options that we can use. And right now we have height, right? Height and unconnected to a height of 20 feet. So what does that mean? Well, if I go back down to my elevations, I'm going to go in my project browser, and I'm just going to click on my north elevation. You'll see that since we opened up our residential template, it already set up some elevation markers for us. So we have our first floor, our second floor, and our roof at 0 feet, 9 feet, and 18 feet. Well, my wall right now is about 20 feet tall. Well, we know it's 20 feet tall because we saw it a moment ago. That is completely unrealistic, right? We do not have a 20-foot tall ranch house that I know of anywhere in this area, but we want to make sure that we have our walls stop at our second floor. So the way to do that is I'm going to go back to my floor plan view, and I'm going to highlight all of my walls just by left-clicking, holding, and drawing a box around it. And here we have base constraints and top constraints, meaning where do we stop and where do we start. So for right now, my base constraint is first floor, and my top constraint, I don't even have one, right? It's just 20 feet. But I know that I want my first floor to stop at my second floor, right? I want it to just kind of hang out there. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go back to my first floor plan here. And my base constraint is already at first floor. My top constraint is unconnected. I'm going to take that, I'm going to make that second floor. Hit apply. And if I go back to my north elevation now, you'll see that I have it connected to my second floor. Okay, now moments ago I said that we're only going to be doing a first floor level building, and I'll show you how to get rid of this floor in just a moment and bring the roof down. But it's very important to understand that having our constraints for our base constraint and our top constraint makes life a lot easier as we go through.